Are the latest polling numbers prompting any of the parties to change their strategies? And what are the campaigns focusing on? With just 5 sleeps until Election Day, let's bring in a special edition of our War Room. Current and former top War Room campaign strategist Jason Leader worked in the Harper government. He's now the president of Enterprise Canada. Zita Astravas held several senior leadership roles with the Trudeau government. She's now a vice president at Wellington Advocacy and advising the Liberal campaign. And Anne McGrath rounds us out. She's a spokesperson for the NDP campaign. Hi, everybody. Hello. Happy 5 sleeps to Election Day.
I think that sounds generous.
Yeah, I know it does. It does. Anne, I wanted to start with you, and just jumping off some of what Nick laid out in sort of, I guess, asking a little bit more about the evolution in strategy. The messaging today was very explicit, I thought, for the first time. It had definitely been hinted at strongly by Mr. Singh, but today sort of saying, like, Pierre Poilievre isn't going to win. You are safe to throw your vote to us. Do you think that message will pick up steam throughout the next few days, and what are you banking on with it?
Well, the thing is that things can change quickly in a campaign. We're in the last few days. It doesn't mean everything, you know, today is not election day. It's not voting day. So there are messages can still get through towards the end. And I think that one of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of New Democrat supporters are getting a little bit fatigued with the discussion about strategic voting and are sort of fighting back a little bit. And so I think that there's a little bit of, I think there's, for me anyway, there's some hope in that. The other thing I should say is that the polling doesn't always take into account, especially the polling aggregators and steep projections, don't always take account of where the concentrated vote is. And so, you know, certainly you talked a little bit there about British Columbia, for instance, and there are seats there where the incumbents are very popular, very well respected. People want to support them, and so I don't think that the picture is as dire as it looks. I think there's lots of hope still there. And I think a lot of New Democrats were really captivated by the fire that Jagmeet brought to the debates. He was very passionate and very forceful, and I think that that's what people were looking for. We had a great rally, for instance, last night in Edmonton, where Rachel Notley, who, you know...
We could have a whole conversation about them appearing together for the first time in a long time.
She introduced him, right? They hugged. It was like, it was a very beautiful moment for me.
I bet it was. Jason, I wanted to get your take on something else Nick brought up, which is the degree to which things have moved when there is movement in the ballot box question. And it has been, I think, the one constant throughout the campaign is this tension between, is it about Trump or is it about change, or maybe the Liberals' record? The Conservatives really seem to have focused on, like, that clip we played from Pierre Poilievre, change, 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 right? Like, that word is on the front of the platform now. Like, that messaging seems to have solidified in the last 10 days of the campaign. Is it your view that that's the one they think will punch through the most in this last stretch?
Yeah, there's no subtlety there. It's change, change, change. And I will say, Poilievre's not known for his subtlety. And by the way, Anne, I found some art with some blue and some orange behind me to just make sure that, you know, I'm cheering for the NDP in some seats and the Tories and some others as well. So I thought you'd like that. I'll say this, Vashi. The change message is the only one that can win the election for Mr. Poilievre. And I think he's trying to get Canadians to look sort of deep at the last 10 years, right? So they had a couple weeks to get used to Mr. Carney, and they liked what they saw in terms of the resume. They liked what seniors especially liked what they saw in terms of the gray hair. And now he's sort of like, it's getting down to it. We got to make a decision here. And the question that I think Poilievre is asking, which is I think the right one, which is, how'd you like the last 10 years? Because, you know, you can dress it up. You know, he's going to say a lot of things, but same ministers, same policies. By the way, the same platform, for goodness sakes. I mean, that platform was literally just cut and paste or copy out of Trudeau's. So I think the Liberals are going to have a hard time. Listen, they might win this election. They're going to have a hard time making the case for a difference. And Mr. Carney, the more the campaign goes on, the less he looks new and the more he looks just like the last government. And I think that's good for Poilievre. He's got a little momentum in his sails. Let's see if, you know, it's going to carry through to Monday.
Yeah, I'd love to put that thesis to you, Zita, and get your perspective on it, because I was saying earlier on my rodeo program this morning, a person stopped me in the rotunda here where I work, downtown Ottawa. He was a Liberal. He's very enthused to see the Liberals doing as well as they are, but his proposition was he's door knocking for them, and when he said, if this election were 2 months later, I don't know if we would win. Like, he really was seeing at the door sort of the impact over time of like a declining enthusiasm, which was admittedly very high at the beginning. What are your thoughts? Do you think that's true? Do you think if this election were 6 months from now, it would be a different situation?
Well, I mean, you just heard from Nick Nanos, like, look at 2 months from now, there was a ton of or 2 months ago, there was a ton of movement in the polls. And what we've seen is some stability in the polls during the election campaign. And certainly the last couple of days of the campaign matter. You see Mark Carney going on the offensive. You know, he's gone to Vancouver Island twice, which I think is quite telling of a Liberal campaign. I think there's a lot of seats in play there for the Liberals, and really I think for the Conservatives in the north part of the island and for the Liberals in Victoria and south part of the island. And he's in Cloverdale tonight, in British Columbia. No secret that there's some seats to gain in British Columbia for Mr. Carney, and he's going after them. And you'll see him touch both coasts again on an offensive posture, really looking to pick up some seats. And you know, I wouldn't count Alberta out. I know the Conservatives didn't bother to add agriculture or farmers to their platform, Jason. I know Anne and I took note of that as Albertans.
The Liberals are known for their support for farmers. Now let's campaign on that.
You know, but I think, but you know what though, Jason, like I think in Alberta there is some competitive ridings for the Liberals, which, you know, something 2 months ago was not. We weren't talking about that. So I really think you'll see a quick campaign for Mr. Carney across the coast, and really looking at those Conservative and those NDP seats that are definitely in play for pickups. And we'll see on Monday. It's really important.
Zita,
that
you have to take a plane.
Right?
You have to take a plane from. You have to take a plane. From
Let her finish. I'll get you right back. I promise. I promise.
You know, I think it's one of those things where, you know, it's a competitive race. The numbers are close, and it's really important, Vashi, to that voter that you talked to today, that every vote does come out, particularly in those really tight 3- or 4-way splits across the country, which have really started to manifest themselves. You know, I think there's a number of seats in play, but they're going to come down to the wire in the last couple of days, and certainly on Election Day. So we'll see. We'll see Mr. Carney on the hustings and really go on the offensive on those pickup seats that are really possible.
Jason, go for it. Catch up.
No, I was laughing because Zita was mentioned agriculture, and I said, you know, the Liberal Party. I mean, basically, you have to take a bus, a train, a plane, and like possibly walk a little bit to get to a farm.
It's a huge absence, Jason.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Zita.
Let me ask you a little, just before I get back to Anne, let me just pick up on what Zita's talking about. If their strategy towards the end is to go on the offense, where there are seats they believe that they might not traditionally have been able to pick up, but might have a chance to, what is the Tories, what are the Conservative strategy in these last number of days? What are they deploying?
I think you'll see less of, you know, the showmanship of that kind of geography. You know, sometimes we over-index on where candidates go, because the truth is sometimes it's smart to go to a place. Sometimes it's not that smart, right? It takes away resources. You have a big rally somewhere, or if you try to get people zoomed up, but it's, you know, you take people off the doors, you take volunteers off the phone banks, all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to the geography of the Conservative campaign, but I will say, I don't think there's going to be many surprises there, Vashi. The Greater Toronto area and the Lower Mainland of BC, the Greater Vancouver area, and a few more other places are the place where this election is going to be won and lost. You saw Nick's numbers there. Pierre's got some work to do in Ontario and in the GTA. The GVR, the Greater Vancouver area, is very competitive. And I think what Pierre is, you know, the other thing too, Vashi, a third of the votes are already in the box, right? We had 7.5 million votes go in over Easter weekend. You know, we're going to have probably short of 20 million votes go over the next little bit. So, you know, for that last 14 million votes, that last 12 million votes or whatever, you've really got to, I think Pierre and his team are counting on how excited people are to vote for him. There is an enthusiasm gap. I'm noticing on the Liberals are a little less enthusiastic about Mr. Carney than they were a couple of months ago when he was like just a resume, and now he's a real person and they see his faults. And Mr. Poilievre, I think, since the debate, has had a really good week or two, and they're counting on that enthusiasm gap to make up some of this polling disadvantage that they've got.
I'll get Zita to respond to that in a moment. But Anne, on the NDP, if you're talking strategy in these last 5 days, like what is it all about the incumbents, or will it be beyond that?
It'll be a bit beyond that for sure, because there are some other seats that are possibly in play. I think that in the last few days, it is all about enthusiasm. It is about, I think for us, it's got to be making it clear that Pierre Poilievre is not going to win this campaign, despite the fact that they were measuring the drapes for a year or two before the campaign. Mr. Carney is definitely benefiting from a short campaign, but I think we have to sow the seeds of doubt there about who he is, whether he should have a blank check, or whether or not he needs some checks and balances. And we have a system that actually is built to have checks and balances. And so I don't think that people are going to be all that comfortable, particularly, a lot of for us is bringing those New Democrats back and pointing out that when Liberals have free reign, things don't go well for people. And we have examples of that. Libby Davies pointed to it at the rally in Vancouver the other night, that in 1993, when we lost party status and the Liberals had a massive majority, they cut health care, they got rid of the housing program, they transformed EI to the point that now most workers don't even qualify for EI. So, there are dangers in letting the Liberals have a blank check.
Are the Liberals, Zita, last word to you, worried about that message potentially resonating, that the support that has essentially, clinched this for them has been from the NDP? Like the exodus from the NDP has gone straight to the Liberals, which has meant that 39% support for the Conservatives will not, at this point, at least according to the polls, translate into a majority government. Are you worried about any of that support peeling back and allowing for a different outcome?
Well, I would say, Vashi, we're talking about the NDP. If you look at, there is some bleed from the Bloc Québécois to the Liberals in Quebec as well. I know Nick was talking about the BQ numbers, and that's an important battleground. Honestly, it's nose to the grindstone, right? There's been a lot of momentum on the Liberal campaign. The campaign organization on election day is quite strong. Same with advanced polls. I think it's a bit passing strange that Jason's now talking the inverse around rallies. But I think you'll see that momentum, those volunteers really come out on election day. And with the number of seats that are so close, 20, 25 seats that are kind of on the bubble, those are election day ridings that we're really looking at. And I think to Anne's point, it's important that Mr. Carney put that positive message forward. He is the best to deal with Donald Trump and the White House administration, not just for the next couple months, but for the duration of Mark Carney's administration and President Trump's administration. And that is a message that is resonating with Canadians coast to coast to coast. I think you'll see him drive that message, but also nose to the grindstone, get the volunteers out, get everyone to the polls. There's enthusiasm at the polls, and I think we really need to capture that in the last stretch.
All right, I'll leave it on that note. 5 sleeps, everyone. Thank you so much for making time for the conversation. I appreciate it. Zita Astor-Vass, Jason Leader, and Anne McGrath, our War Room panel.